Does branding your content, meaning adding logos, colors, and texts and whatever that is, onto your social media, podcast, YouTube content actually make a difference? On today's video, I'm going to walk you through the differences between branding personal brand content and actual brand content, and the way you should really discover what to implement when it comes to your content and branding. So let's get one thing straight. First of all, branding isn't just a logo. It's not like colors and all that. It's not this. Like, it is everything that encompasses who you are as a company, or who you are as a coach, or who you are as a service provider, or whatever that is. Whether you like it or not, you do have a brand. Even if you have an amazing logo and an actual like brand is what we think of as a brand, or you may have something that's non-existent and it's just non-existent brand. Well, we really need to dig into the differences between those two things if you're going to be putting social media content, a podcast, YouTube, writing a book, putting it out on behalf of your personal brand, maybe to leverage to drive people to your actual business and services, versus if you actually just started a brand and you're putting content out that way. So let's talk about those differences and how to make that decision on branding. Now, you're coming to this video, I'm assuming you already are aware of what brand is, how important it is, and that sort of thing. So we're going to skip over all of that. I do have several videos backwards that do talk about branding just a little bit. So let's just say, for example, your personal brand. You're somebody like me who's putting out YouTube content, social media content under the name of Josh Color or under the name of your name. And you might think, well, I do have a logo. Like me, I actually do have a logo for Josh Color. You may not even know what it is. And the reason why is because when it comes to personal branding is typically covered with the face. So my face is the brand of my personal brand. And that's a really important distinction to make, because obviously if you start a company and you start a business, more than likely you have a logo that covers that. But let's just take for an example, some of the bigger name brands out there that are actual personal brands, a Gary Vaynerchuk, a Lewis Howes, or Alex Hormozi. If you look at those guys, they certainly do have a brand, like they have a logo that they could put on stuff. I know Gary Vee's, it used to be, I don't know if it is anymore, but it used to be his signature and stuff like that. That's all there, but we know the brand of them from the face. And typically on their videos, you're not really going to see any branding anywhere. There's not going to be branding in the bottom right-hand corner of their video, or at the top of their video, or kind of like watermarked at the bottom of their video, or even at the end of the video when they're given a call to action. You're not really going to see that stuff much. And the reason is because they know the investment it takes for personal brand, because it is the face. It's the connection. It's the human emotion that we're connecting to. Think of it from this standpoint. Why does Nike endorse athletes? Why did Nike back in the 80s sign Michael Jordan? And before that, athletes that were track and field that were successful in their sport. The reason is because they understand the value of a personal brand. They understand that Michael Jordan was so influential in the sport of basketball that they wanted to sign him to wear their sneakers. So on the court, Michael Jordan was the personal brand, but on his feet were the brand of Nike, and that was the leverage that they pulled. And that's why I always talk about, and you'll see other influencers out there talk about, personal brand should be leveraged as a platform. So you may not be the business. Like Josh Color, me, I am not the business. I have a service, a business that offers podcast production, social media management. We call that Color Media. But I am the platform. So you may have found me and then have interest in working with me individually, but I'm going to push you into my service where I am involved and I run the business, but I am not the business. You understand? There's a big difference there. And so the endorsements that Nike through the years has made with Kobe Bryant, with LeBron James, with Ja Morant, and all these other athletes that they have brought on board, and even now they understand the value of, say, the WNBA, whether you watch the WNBA or not, how much it's grown. They're now investing a lot more into athletes there to sign them, because they understand once that athlete has built their platform, we need to build upon that platform for them. It's leverage. So the end all be all, even though brand still exists and makes a lot of difference, if we take the math and let's say we add up all of Nike's followers across all their social platforms, millions, and we might see like, wow, that's a big number. But if we combine how many Michael Jordan has, how many LeBron James has, how many Asia Wilson has, how many Sabrina Ionescu has, or whoever else is a Nike athlete, and add all those up, I guarantee you it's going to very much be a big difference. And they are Nike athletes, they are Nike contributors, and they push the brand. that's more powerful than actually putting out brand content. So the question might be, should I even put out branded content in the first place? We'll get to that in just a second. But I just wanted to make sure you guys understood the difference between what a personal brand is and what an actual brand is. So I'm going to make the distinction for you now. The difference is going to be if you're actually putting out content that's driving to a specific thing that you do in your business, then you probably want to put out branded content in that sense. And yes, everybody that has a business should put out branded content on their branded platforms. The difference I'm going to make for you is just say you're not going to have that much growth in comparison to what your personal brand potentially could have. They're just two different types of branding. They're two different types of businesses. They have two different types of aura, if you will. And it's important to make sure you understand the differences there, because you don't want to set too high expectations for your brand and then maybe your personal brand takes off and you're like, why didn't my brand take off when I did almost the exact same thing for my personal brand? It's because people connect with faces a whole lot more as opposed to just a logo and colors. To the nitty gritty, what we want to make sure we do is let me give you an example of, say, a person that buys and sells houses. I work heavily with real estate investors. So if they have a brand that buys houses, we would put content out for them on behalf of them that's driving, answering questions that maybe a seller would have when selling their house. That's the type of content we're going to put out that's driven for that. We might get their acquisitions agent on there. We might get their operations director on there. We might get their sales manager on the videos, the owner on the videos. It's an encompassing thing. It's the whole company. If you look at Nike's content on their Instagram page or YouTube or whatever, there's different, you're never going to see the same face over and over and over again. It's a combination of a bunch of people, and that's what's being leveraged. So that's the difference there. As a personal brand, you could put out daily content. You could put out stuff that is encompassing about the donut shop that you make. There's another donut shop analogy. The donut shop that you own, the coaching program that you launch, the services that you have, all that stuff can be encompassed around you personally and who you are as a person, and use that as a platform to build upon and then drive people to your services when interested. And that's kind of the deviation that you want to make between the two. I know it's not clear. I know it's kind of a gray area in some ways. However, just think of it from a standpoint is, does this serve me individually, and is this a lot more built for a personal following, or is it built for my actual customers? Because as a personal brand, you're not looking at it from a standpoint of you're serving customers. It's a standpoint of you're serving an audience. Whereas a business, you're serving customers. You may have an audience, but ultimately it's customers that you're serving there. So that's kind of the difference. So they may ask the question, let's say we put out personal branded content. Do I want to use the same style, the same colors, the same messaging and stuff like that? Yes, all the above. Branding ultimately comes down to consistency. In order to be able to achieve what branding is set out to do, consistency is the biggest factor. This is why I'm a big proponent of, if you put out a podcast a week, and you stay consistent with that, because that's going to allow people to see you more and more and more on a consistent basis. If you put out daily videos, you should do that as well, and don't stop, because that's allowing people to see you every single day and you're staying top of mind. That's ultimately what branding accomplishes. So all the above, visuals, your language, your messaging, your call to actions, they should all stay consistent, because if you don't stay consistent with those things, then you can create confusion, people not know who you are, or maybe somebody's out there that looks like you, maybe does the same thing, and then there's confusion there. You don't want that to happen. So control that. Those are the controllables that you can control, is the visuals, not necessarily slapping the logo on your videos. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what the brand is actually meant to do is to allow people to fully understand who you are, what you do, and who you serve. If there's people that follow me on social media and they don't know what I do, then I have failed at my branding, getting in front of them, staying consistent with my messaging, because it's very important for me to make sure that the reason I'm putting content out, and even from a personal side, that it is business, it's marketing myself, but I'm ultimately driving that audience back from me to my business and feeding it that way. And it works. It's just the way it works. It's the system that's created from driving value and then having a business on the backside of it. But the ultimate goal here is to make sure that people know who you are and what you do. So if I'm asking my audience, who am I and what do I do? And they stutter or they have no clue, if they at least give some sort of a guess, they may not need to know down to the exact T what I want. Ultimately, that's what I want. But if somebody asks, like, what does Nike do? Then you could probably say, like, well, Nike's a clothing, shoe, like sports equipment company that, produces sneakers, it produces gear for basketball, for golf, for whatever. and you could kind of voice what that is, that's ultimately what Nike's trying to do. So at the end of the day, the goal is to let people know what we do and make sure that we stay consistent with that and they're very, very aware of it. And especially the people that we are serving, whether it be the customer or the audience. So at the end of the day, should you brand your content? It does come down to you. Does it make a difference? Ultimately, personal branded content, I say don't necessarily slap logos on it and brand it, but on your company, yeah, you should have branded content. You should have your logos there. You should have your call to actions, your colors, and that sort of thing. Just don't over brand it. And what I mean by that is be tasteful with it. That's the important thing when it comes to the aesthetics and the style. You don't want to shove your brand into people's faces because that ultimately does shut people down, because then they feel like they're being sold to. So that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening in. Hopefully that did give you a little bit of context around what branding is and then how you can actually leverage that in your organic social media content. If you guys have any more questions or you want to leave a comment below, feel free to do that. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. And thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. See ya.